Thank you everyone for joining the call. At the end, we'll have a Q&A session like we did before. So go ahead and put your questions into the chat as we go. And then at the end, we'll just kind of do them in order, and I'll repeat the questions this time so I know what we're talking about. This should be about 15, 16 minutes. I want to thank everyone for coming. Let me get this started. This is a little bit of introduction. We are Carousel Cloud. We are content-based content management software for digital signage. I'm Cullen Gross. I am the sales engineer over here as well. Also have a guest with me. We have Carolyn Korchik. She's the Director of Information Security and Compliance. She'll be available at the end to answer any questions that go above my head. We're going to be talking about security specific to digital signage, and because we are Carousel, to Carousel Cloud as the CMS sort of example in here. The target audience is going to be primarily kind of corporate customers, government, and high ed, but anyone that's security minded who might be considering or responsible for digital signage. A lot of these practices are fairly universal, so this might be beneficial for you even if you're not a Carousel customer. So what are we talking about today? We're basically talking about confidence. We're talking about confidence in a digital signage deployment, which comes from proactively considering the worst case situations and having plans to address them. Digital signage in theory is somewhat simple. You schedule and create your content, and then you see that content on the screen. However, like any information system, multiple facets of security are vital to explore. So we'll be talking about device and screen security, the physical point where your content is delineated, securing the content in your management system. So we'll talk about options within Carousel Cloud to achieve this and some best practices as well. Being secure is a balance between the vendor and the customer. So in our case, Carousel and our customers. So we'll be considering which party is responsible for which aspects of security. And then lastly, we'll just talk about some ongoing practices that we have here at Carousel to ensure that we're keeping up with our promises and how we accurately provide information for customers to verify before they trust us. So let's start with sort of device security. The most visible security concern among users in digital signage is definitely unwanted content on their screens. If a screen is compromised, everyone is compromised. The organization, the CMS vendor, technology partners who installed the system, internal IT, the content manager, pretty much everyone. Due to this, the physical security of screens and digital signage media players is fairly paramount. There are a few low-level and common hardening practices that you can consider, such as making sure that the sources of the screen, like HDMI, other video ports, the IR port for the remote, are all disabled, as long as making sure that that media player that's driving the screen isn't easily or quickly accessed by someone who might not have, for someone who might be like walking up to the screen and getting behind it. The media player is a specifically important case. Sometimes we're asked why, as a vendor that likes to say that we're hardware agnostic, why we don't fully support some of the more cheaper and consumer grade devices. One reason for that is obviously not having enough power to run all of our features, but a primary reason is that not all hardware can be secured at a device level. Carousel is just software, right? Your content management system for digital signage is just software that runs on these devices. And we don't control additional security aspects of the media player. So consider devices that can be hardened or configured to prevent unauthorized access at the point of installation. Some examples of this and things that we support would be the Apple TV with a mobile device manager like Jamf, which can lock that device into single app mode, make it unresponsive to the remote and turn off AirPlay, have it auto launch in case of a power outage. Just things you can do to lock out like those consumer level features and sort of gain some security confidence using that sort of device as a signage platform. Additionally, there's products like BrightSign, which is designed with digital signage security from the ground up, taking out some of that guesswork or additional hardening out of the mix for you to achieve. When you move to, say, like a Windows-based media player, you can still harden those devices with like device policies, but more complex operating systems require more attention and more IT lift to secure. So although we might not lead with those sort of options, just know that when we talk about sort of shared responsibility, the device and how you harden it is definitely sort of on you. But we have some best practices to sort of help navigate that. So when it comes to your content, right? Let's say that you're pretty confident in your physical security position. The next step is to secure the content itself and how you deliver that content. Because digital signage is a sort of a one-to-many information system, one small misconfiguration could mean all your screens are compromised within that delivery of your content. A big factor of securing the content is access of your content creators. So this would mean leveraging correct rights and roles, having role-based access, making sure that if you have multiple departments that they are sort of segmented in your CMS to only see sort of their area and their content, setting up sort of a single sign-on system. So if you do leverage an SSO system, having your users log in with that system so that we're not holding any passwords, that if you do have multi-factor authentication, that's going to be leveraged as well. And then, of course, using some approval workflows as well. So if you do have a lot of users spread around through a lot of areas or a lot of physical locations, that you have content creators, then you have people that can actually see, approve, and manually put that on the screen. So there's like an additional check and balance. Some digital signage content is not always public information. So we also have to think about when we're talking about that device, right? Like what would happen if someone just took your URL or took your CMS app and figured out your instance name and was able to kind of pull private information that you didn't want to share publicly, like be able to sort of walk away with that signage, right? So having like very tight internal access controls is one thing, but ensuring that that device that you're using is controlled and has a registration process that is there to sort of prevent that hijacking, right? So being able to make sure that if someone gets your information, that they can't actually see your content without you being in the UI and like allowing that connection, which is something we do. And then sort of going off the idea of having Jamf or Control Cloud with Bright Sign or another way to manage your devices, being able to remotely wipe those devices when they're no longer deployed is also a good practice to make sure that your content doesn't end up somewhere else beyond your organization. So when it comes to the responsibility of security, it's definitely not on one person, nor is it on one organization. There are some aspects that customers are responsible for, and some that the vendor, Carousel in our case, needs to provide. So from a customer perspective, right, your responsibility would be that device security, that physical security. And although we can help you with this, selecting and provisioning and maintaining the media player of your choice to make sure that's going to work within your organization, work within your IT team, and that the level of attention it requires is something that you can manage. Additionally, you'll also be adding your content creators, so people you trust, adding your administrators, and making sure that the rights and roles are correct. We do have a success team here as well that can kind of help you navigate that. So if you're not quite sure, we can kind of say like, here are some of the best practices. And of course, also enabling SSOs and using approval workflows when needed. Carousel's responsibility, in contrast, for making sure that our infrastructure in AWS is updated, maintained, and correct, that we're patching, updating, configuring the individual customer instances correctly as well, ensuring the software we create is secure from a logical perspective, that timely support and proactive and reactive plans for worst case situations are deployed and maintained, and that kind of the biggest thing is that we're protecting all of the customer data that we're holding and making sure that that data is encrypted both in transit and at rest. Some additional things, and I might have Carolyn chime in if she would like to, but we do have some ongoing sort of things as well. Carousel's dedication to security goes beyond the idea of like, just trust us, right? Like we aim to provide accurate information on a security posture and let you use those insights to make that sort of decision. The information, we provide this information in a few ways. A great resource to start is with our knowledge base article. I'll link in the chat, I'll link the like kind of general security document, which a lot of people can kind of start with. It kind of does a lot of what this presentation is about. Operationally, we have some ongoing dependency monitoring. Our engineers follow the OWASP top 10, and we have some tightly controlled production access requirements. So any employee that's going into your instance to resolve something or fix something, all that's tracked, all that's audited. Yearly, we have third-party security partners perform sort of penetration testing against our software and our services. So we have like a third-party team that we don't control, that we don't have any interest in, from like a business perspective, that comes at us sort of within a time frame and make sure that everything we're doing is secure and modern and up to date, and that we're not vulnerable to any sort of new things since the last time. Internally, we've taken a few steps to sort of bake security into our internal processes, including hiring, although it's been a while now, a dedicated director of information security and compliance, which is Carolyn, who's really helped us ensure that the Carousel team operates on many of these best practices and takes consistent supplemental security training. Also, a big thanks to her, we are somewhat still recently SOC 2 Type 2 compliant. Is that the right word? I think. Which requires a lot of security controls to be in place and maintained. And that's sort of our ongoing sort of behind the scenes things that we continue to operate on, including keeping documentation updated like a HECVAC, SIG, our SOC type 2 report as well. Carolyn, is there anything you'd like to add on sort of like what we've done sort of from your perspective in at least the last year that, that's kind of important?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Cullen. Hey everyone, I am Carolyn. I have been here just over a year and a half. I think one of the biggest things that, we're obviously focused on security of, features in the app that, we are offering, but, kind of looking at a bigger picture, what are our objectives? What are our goals? How are we living and breathing security day to day? We have come so far in the last year and a half. We would love to share our SOC 2 report with you if you would love to see it as well. So just want to make a plug for that. If you are a current customer, talking with your customer success manager, you can always just reach out to security or whomever. We are all here to help you. But we have been doing so many things behind the scenes. Some of them obviously Cullen has gone over here. But want to assure you that we are really excited about all the things that we are working on, and all in the goal of keeping customer data secure, and having you feel like we are competent, we are able to handle your data. So thanks, Cullen.
Thank you, Carolyn. So I hope that this sort of taste of security in the world of digital signage was useful and enlightening. I think the biggest thing is that everybody's situation, security situation, is going to be different based on what type of organization you are, what kind of IT help you have, obviously which CMS you have. So if you have any interest to sort of explore this more as a potential new customer, obviously reach out to us. If you're a current customer and you have certain questions or concerns, or want to sort of make sure that everything's sort of in a row, of course, reach out to your customer success manager or review the security document. But with that, we'd like to keep these fairly short. So I want to just first thank everyone for joining us today. We'll have a Q&A section sort of next. I know that there's 2 questions in the chat I haven't looked at quite yet. Before we go, I will put in that security link here in a second after I stop sharing my screen. And then Ross, I see you raise your hand. If you want to speak, you'll have to be given permission by Mitch. But if you enjoyed this content, please follow us on LinkedIn to keep up with future content. This is our last spotlight of the year, but we do have other ongoing content that's available as well. So I will stop sharing my screen briefly so we can do the Q&A, and I can get you that link in the chat.